Yeah, oh, yay. Happy October! Guys, October is one of my favorite months of the year. I love it because I love candy, I love horror movies, I love autumn, I love hot apple cider, and the best part of October is that it is the month of my mother's birthday. My mother, if you're not familiar, is the greatest person in the world. She's my favorite living person on earth, and her birthday is on Monday, October 7th. Now, I'm expecting this comment section to be absolutely flooded with happy birthday niece's mother, and if it's not, let's just say there will be dire consequences for you and me. I don't have another gift picked out, so. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is nisipisa, and today I'm getting in the Halloween spirit early and often. I'm putting the photogenic side in the camera. She has flaws, just like me. I love carving pumpkins, even though I'm not very good at it, and I don't have an artist's soul. So I'm approaching this project with very low expectations, but a whole heck of a lot of enthusiasm. Now, before I get started, you might be noticing my hand is a little banged up. Don't get freaked out. This is not from an earlier pumpkin carving attempt gone awry. There is still plenty of opportunity for that to happen. The way in which I injured my hand is actually much stupider and much more cartoonish. And I'll tell you about it while I lay out some newspaper. So I'm trying to be a little bit more responsible with how I eat. And by that, I mean, I'm trying not to have candy and sweets all the time. I'm trying to like make some changes, right? So I haven't been purchasing little treats to have in the house. And honestly, I'm going to because it's October. So like, what am I gonna do? Not eat sweets and snacks? Like, what exactly else is there to do? Wistfully stare out of my window while holding a hot drink, watching the leaves in the trees across the street from my apartment turn brown, knowing that winter is on her merry way? No, thank you. I'm saying all this to set up the fact that I didn't have any sweets in my apartment. I came home from work yesterday, desperate to satiate my sweet tooth. I wanted cookies, I wanted candy, I wanted ice cream, I wanted sheet cake. I come home, I'm fiending for something sweet. And I didn't want to go out and buy something because I was like, that's a slippery slope. If I go to Walgreens right now, I'm walking out with the whole damn store. I went into my kitchen, seeing if I could like fashion a sweet snack out of the dried cranberries and like peanuts I have in my cabinet. And I saw that I had like a packet left of Carnation Instant Breakfast, which if you're not familiar is a like chocolate powdered breakfast drink mix with vitamins in it. And I've been drinking it since I was a kid, and sometimes I have one in the morning when I know I have a busy morning at work and I'm not gonna have time to like go get a bagel or whatnot. I'm pulling the box out of the cabinet, and somehow, some way, I knocked over a bottle of chili oil that was behind the box in the cabinet. And the bottle of chili oil fell onto my hand hard enough to split in two, because it was one of those sort of like hourglass Beyonce shaped bottles, and at its narrowest point it was like a moment of pure mathematical perfection, I guess. Split in two, the glass as it's falling cuts into my hand right here and right here. I start bleeding profusely and I'm like, oh, ouch, oh, oh! Because chili oil was now getting all in my wounds. Can you imagine if I bled out in my, that would be so embarrassing. If I bled out in the process of trying to make chocolate milk. I couldn't go out like that. But yeah, I dressed the wounds and I made my chocolate milk, and it wasn't satisfying. So I went to Walgreens and I bought a package of Oreos. If nothing else, I've earned it. I literally bled for it. Anyway. Oh, it's like I have a crystal ball and I'm telling your Halloween future. You're gonna have a spooktacular time. Before I begin, I'm gonna get myself a pot of cold water to put my pumpkin seeds in, my pumpkin guts rather, so the seeds will be nice and clean for me to roast them later. Because you are out of your gourd if you think I'm not gonna make roasted pumpkin seeds about this. Let's do some pumpkin surgery. There's a coupon for shrimp cocktail to go on one of these newspapers. And now I'm trying to think of how I can remix Hot to Go by Chapel Roan to involve the phrase shrimp cocktail, but it's too long of a phrase to spell out. Why don't you guys work on that in the comments for me? Whoever gets the best one will be able to feel the pride of knowing that they made me laugh. I was a pumpkin for my first Halloween that I remember, when I was a little lady, a little lass. I don't remember if I had any say in the costume. I think my mom just handed it to me. It was like, you're wearing this. And I was like, well, I'm 3, so I don't really know how to argue with you yet. If I could have picked a costume when I was a toddler, I probably would have wanted to be a cat, like one of my house cats. I was a big fan of my house cats when I was a little kid. We had 2 tuxedo cats growing up. Their names were Felix and Sylvie. I've always been a cat girl. I've always been a cat lady. Also, I think what contributed to me loving cats so much when I was a kid is that I was very afraid of dogs. And cats are sort of like the molecular opposite of dogs. We had this really mean little dog. She was a Chihuahua. She lived next door to me in a fenced-in yard. Her name was Minnie, and she hated my guts. Her owner was this very nice woman who would give us Vietnamese wafers, a big, beautiful tin of wafers every year. They were delicious. But her dogs were menaces. One afternoon, when I was maybe 4, her and my mother were talking, as neighbors do, and Minnie got out of her yard, and she made a beeline for little me. And she started chasing me around my yard, nipping at my heels as I screamed and cried and begged for someone to rescue me. And ever since then, up until I was like 13, I was terrified of dogs. And then my across the street neighbor got a Yorkshire Terrier puppy, and he was so cute and so small that I was like, perhaps some dogs do deserve rights. And now I just sort of like don't like them very much. It's gone from fear to indifference. I'm cutting the gooey part off of the lid of this pumpkin so that my pumpkin can have a little hat. I'm all giggly today. It's Saturday. I'm excited. I'm gonna watch a movie later, I think. I don't know what movie. I'm gonna pick a scary movie. I love scary movies. I'm a big horror movie person, and I didn't always used to be. When I was like 13, the same year, I got over my fear of dogs. One of my friends, who has always been a horror girl, started inviting me and a couple of our other friends over to her house on Friday nights in the fall to watch movies. The first one we watched together was John Carpenter's Halloween, starring Jamie V. Lee Curtis. The first Halloween terrified me. It freaked me out to the point that I was scared to walk home from my friend's house, and I lived like a 4.5 minute walk away from her. But it was nighttime and it was dark, and I kept thinking about Michael Myers. I love this part of carving pumpkins. Then we watched Halloween 2, which, and I'll spare you the graphic details, involves like a throwaway scene of a kid who has bitten into an apple that some degenerate put a razor blade in. And I didn't eat apples for 7 months after that. It was almost as bad as when I was in 6th grade, and my math teacher told me that sometimes spiders lay their eggs inside of grapes. And I didn't eat grapes again until, and this is not a joke, I was a freshman in college. I love ooey gooey things. I was a big like slime and oobleck kid when I was younger. When I was like 24 and I was still teaching, I got really into slime making at a point during my intense depression. And every flat surface of my apartment had a Tupperware in it with some sort of god-awful homemade slime concoction. And then I got over it once I stopped teaching and felt like living life again. Anyway, we watched The Evil Dead next. Sam Raimi's Evil Dead, starring Bruce Campbell, which came out in, I think, 1981, which now is one of my favorite horror movies. I've watched it again many times since then. I like it so much that I even saw the 2013 remake of The Evil Dead, directed by Fede Alvarez, and I think it's like one of the best horror remakes out there. That one is great, and I think it was Luca Guadagnino did a remake of Suspiria, Dario Argento's Suspiria, in 2018, starring Tilda Swinton and Dakota Johnson, of all people. Great flick. And you know what? And I'll be quick about this because it doesn't really mean anything to you if you haven't seen both versions of Suspiria. The original is really lurid and colorful, and they use all sorts of lighting filters, and it sort of feels like a fairy tale. It's a little like Alice in Wonderland-esque, but like scary and about witches and ballet. And it gives it this very surreal, trippy feeling, and it's really fun. Whereas the 2018 remake really utilizes its setting as like Cold War era Berlin to its logical aesthetic conclusion, if you will. It's dark and gray and like kind of upsetting, and it's just a very grim external environment. I mean, they're both atmospheric in different ways. I really recommend watching both of them, unless you're scared of horror movies, in which case, don't. I don't really consider either of them to be that scary. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, actually the same friend from the story about the friend who invited me over to her house. We're still very close friends. She was telling me about this argument she and her fiance were having over whether the movie I Saw the TV Glow is a horror movie. If you haven't seen it, it's a great movie. I loved thinking about it afterwards. I did not like the experience of watching I Saw the TV Glow. I found it to be a very distressing movie. And she and I kind of agreed that it's hard to define the movie I Saw the TV Glow as a horror movie because it's hard to define what a horror movie is. Because it's hard to define what fear is. You can't really give emotions singular definitions, especially something as complex as fear. No. Lots of things scare me that wouldn't make good horror movies. And sometimes I get freaked out by a movie that I didn't expect would scare me. Like when I saw Hereditary a couple years ago when it came out. I went into it knowing very little about Ari Aster. I knew about his first short film, There's Something About the Johnsons, because when I was teaching in a high school, the kids in my high school got wind of what that movie was about, and they thought it was just the funniest thing ever. And I had to be like, guys, I cannot facilitate this conversation. We are not talking about this here. This is school. I went into Hereditary kind of just expecting to be dazzled by Toni Collette, as I always am by her, and I left that theater really freaked out, which is especially weird because that movie, a big dynamic is like mother-daughter relationships, and I have a phenomenal relationship with my mom, as evidenced by the first like minute and a half of this video. That kind of leads me into something else, which is I don't really need to relate to the things that I'm watching to feel sort of emotionality about them. I remember one time I was on Twitter and I saw someone say, if I didn't really party in high school at all, would I like Euphoria? And I was like, what the hell kind of question is that? It's a fictional television show, right? Like, I've never sold meth in New Mexico, but I love Breaking Bad. Hereditary didn't appeal to me because I related to it. I just thought it was a well-told, unsettling story with the freakiest score I've ever heard. Colin Stetson, you're nuts for the score of Hereditary. I went on a date with a guy a couple of months ago, and he's like a music dude. And we were talking about like movie scores, because I'm like a movie girl. And I was talking about Hereditary, and I brought up Colin Stetson, and he was like, oh, I know him. And I was like, oh. He's like, yeah, I hung out with him once. I don't think they were friends, but I was still like, do you have his number? Can you tell him I love his work with saxophones? That's like a whole other aspect of it. Music, sound, can really change the impression that a horror movie has on you. Longlegs came out recently with Nicolas Cage. The story of that movie is like not all that scary. It's scary in sort of a general sense, but it's not like the most freaky idea for a movie. Devil worshipping stuff, dolls stuff, family annihilation type stuff, you know, sunshine, rainbows, ponies, etc. But the sound editing of that movie is just punishing. Now, is it possible that the fact that exactly 2 hours prior to the start of the movie I had taken a little piece of special candy? Perhaps, maybe that feeds into why I was so struck by the sound editing. It scaled me a little bit, it really did. Ugh, I'm gonna have to get those seeds out of there. Why did I do that? This whole time I've been talking, I've been completely unable to think of an idea for how I want to carve this pumpkin. I'm kind of not going into it with an idea on purpose because I don't think I'm going to do a very good job. If I wanted this pumpkin to look like Garfield the cat, for example, there's really no guarantee that I would be able to make that happen. So I'm just gonna pick up a knife and see where it gets me. Not unlike a horror movie antagonist. I don't think it's wise to seek out horror movies that are just about things that would scare you in real life. I've seen movies about ghosts that scared me. I'm not afraid of ghosts in real life. I hope they're real. Demonic possession is something else that doesn't scare me, because I don't really believe in like the devil and like hell and stuff. But I still love those movies. Girl, I saw The Rite in theaters. Who else can say that? Actually, one of the first movies I ever saw when I was entering the phase of my adolescence where I was really into horror was The Exorcist. They were doing a screening of it in one of the lecture halls at Sarah Lawrence, which is where I went to undergrad, on Halloween at midnight. And I went with my friends, and it terrified me. And I was like, what an exhilarating feeling. I want to chase this. I want to watch more horror movies. And then I watched Insidious, and I was like, not this one. I hate that movie. I think it's a really disorganized movie that kind of fails to be scary. There's kind of just too much and not enough going on in it at the same time. I feel similarly about Sinister. I just don't think it's very good. But some people call Sinister like the scariest movie ever. So what does that tell you? It's impossible to draw straight lines when you're talking about horror. And it's why I think it's really irritating when people are like super elitist about horror movies. I am admittedly a little playfully mean to my friends who don't like horror movies at all. Because I'm like, well, maybe one day you'll like mature like me. I used to know this guy who was very much the kind of horror movie fan that would mock you if you jumped at a jump scare in a movie, in a sense that implied like, oh, you're a weenie for being scared by this. And it's like, I'm not a weenie. I'm someone with functioning reflexes, you dumbass. Like, it literally is designed to surprise you. I will argue with someone about the efficacy of a horror movie. I won't necessarily say that they're delusional or wrong for liking it, but I will be like, really? Like, I famously don't like the Blair Witch Project. I think it is really boring. And I think also outside of its original context of being a movie that purported itself to be found footage of real people who went missing in the woods, outside of that, it's not a very effective horror movie. That's my opinion. And people have fought me on that, and I don't care. For me, my enjoyment of horror is a lot less about what scares me and a lot more about what resonates with me. My enjoyment of horror movies is sort of like my enjoyment of spicy food, or some people's enjoyment of solo traveling or extreme sports. It strikes me in a deeper, more immediate way than perhaps a comedy would or a rom-com would. It is not, rather, about like, I just like to see people get fucked up, I like blood, and I like guts, and I want to see people get killed. I want to see people get unalived. I saw this TikTok the other day where a woman was like, if you like horror movies, there's something fundamentally wrong with you. Grow up. Sometimes people who don't like horror movies think that every horror movie is like, I don't know, Terrifier, and it's just like people getting killed in increasingly cartoonish ways, someone getting beaten to death with their own sawed-off arm, perhaps. And some people are into that stuff. Those people are the real freaks. What do I want this pumpkin to look like? I've never been like a text-based jack-o'-lantern person, like people who like carve in words that say Happy Halloween or boo. I've always done a face. And I've always done sort of a classic jack-o'-lantern face. I've never really branched out. I talked earlier about Garfield. Who am I, Quentin reviews? I'm gonna do like cat eye shapes, and then maybe like carve out a little shape in the middle to give them sort of like identity. I don't know if you can see that. It doesn't really matter. Okay, I gotta give it a little cat nose. That's easy. That's just a little upside down triangle. But one of the reasons I'm so into horror is because I was such a fearful kid, and I'm not a fearful adult. I'm afraid of a lot of things. But as a kid, I was scared of everything. I was afraid of bugs, I was afraid of dogs, I was afraid of spiders in a different, more specific way than how I was afraid of bugs. I was afraid of people in big mascot costumes. As a kid, whenever I wound up in a new place, like whenever I was brought along on a trip or something, I would think about what the likelihood of me encountering one of my fears would be. I have this really distinct memory of accompanying my mom on a trip to Peaks Island in Maine, which is where one of her work friends lived. And as we got off the ferry, I was sort of thinking in my head, okay, there's
slightly higher than usual likelihood that I'll see bugs here since there's woods. I'll definitely see dogs since people live here. I probably won't see anyone in mascot costumes because this is a small island.
I made so many friends of mine lock their dogs in spare rooms when I went over because I was so scared of them. Oh, that don't look good at all. That don't look good at all. I messed up. By the way, I messed up right there. I was trying to do a cat mouth and I went astray. Oh, I know. I'll do sort of like I'll do sort of like, can you see it? Can you see it? Can you see what I drew? I'm being silly. I love crafts. I've been spending the past couple of days doing sort of like necromancy on my various candles that are sort of half burnt and all tunneled because it's fall and I like lighting candles in the fall, you know? And so it involves me like grinding up the wax and scraping it out and melting it down on my laboratory hot plate that I bought for my makeup crafts. I just finished sanitizing all of my borosilicate beakers. I'm considering buying a second set of them so I could do more crafts. I can have one for wax work and I can have one set for makeup. Very organized. I want to do a video where I go through my various Franken makeup processes when I melt down makeup and mix it together to make other things. At this point, most of the makeup that I own is stuff that I've sort of like freaked around with. Pretty much all of my blushes at this point I've turned into cream blushes because working with powders is really difficult and I don't like doing it. The reason I haven't done that yet is because I'm afraid that you guys will judge me because of how dirty my hot plate is, because sometimes I spill things onto it and then because it's a hot plate, it burns onto it. I gotta like scrub it. Okay, that looks crazy. I guess I gotta do like little slivers on the side for whiskers. So that's one set of whiskers. Now, okay. This looks bad. Doesn't even look like a cat. Okay. Okay. Now comes the hard part. This video is gonna be so long. I haven't even started doing the thing that I set out. This is why I don't like do crafts while I do my videos, because I get too wrapped up in talking. Whatever, you don't care. You just like seeing me. You guys are so nice to me. It's like crazy. It's a good thing I'm a good person, otherwise I totally wouldn't deserve it. I'm starting with the nose because I think it'll center the face in a really helpful way. I say that operating on the assumption that the nose that I drew is centered on the face, which it's not, but it makes a new center. It doesn't really matter because everything I'm doing is going to be done in relation to the center that I've made. We have our first actual cut. Now I'm gonna do the mouth. I need some leverage for this actually. So once I'm able to really scrub down my hot plate, I'll set aside some products for a Franken makeup project and I'll make a little video about it. I have made a Franken makeup video before, a couple years ago, and I was making eyeshadow in it, which I don't do anymore because like I said, working with powder is so annoyingly difficult and it's really hard to get right. So now I kind of exclusively do lip and cheek projects. Sounds like someone else in my building was doing some crafts too. Now I kind of exclusively do lip and cheek products also because, you know, I can't guarantee that anything I'm making is safe for the eyes. And when I melt something down, I'm messing with the chemical structure of whatever preservatives are in it. And I feel a little bit more comfortable taking risks like that with my cheeks than I do my eyes. Oh my God, that's so uneven. What have I done? I ruined it. I ruined everything. Actually, that's not that bad. Maybe I can use like nail polish remover to get some of this Sharpie off. Wiping it down with a wet paper towel did not work. Anyway, cycling back a little bit, I would love to know what some of your favorite horror movies are. And if you're someone who doesn't like horror movies, that's fine. If there's any other festive type movies you like watching around Halloween, that would also be fun to learn about. And I'm not gonna make fun of you and nobody else is either. So we have a nose and a mouth. I'm actually very pleased. I thought I ruined the mouth. I like the mouth. I think it's got personality. This is gonna be hard. I think what I have to do is like kind of carve a circle and then cut out of that. You know what I mean? I think I can do it. Cool that this is like the thickest part of the pumpkin. So it is actually the hardest to do. That's awesome. I wonder what that sound is. Guys, I think I did it. I think I did it. Oh my God, I did it! I did it! Look, I got a cat eye. Ah! Oh my gosh, I really thought I was gonna mess that up. Okay, now I just have to do that again perfectly. My kitty's almost done. I just gotta do the whiskers now. I don't have any tea light candles, I realized. I also don't have a porch, so it doesn't really matter what I do. Oh, I didn't do a great job getting these guts out of here. Well, maybe it's a sick cat. I can't believe I thought I was gonna be able to use a non-serrated knife during this project. You need those ridges. You need the knife to be ribbed for her pleasure. Guys, I've got the Halloween spirit. I'm feeling mischievous. I'm so sorry. Also, anytime I film outside of just sitting at my desk, I get so goofy. It's like being there imbues me with this goofball energy, and I get so silly with it. These whiskers are a little oblong. I'm not worried about it. Oh shit. I f***ed up. I cut too deep a little bit. It's okay. No one will notice because this doesn't matter to anyone except me. All right, I'm getting acetone. We have our acetone, and then we have the box I keep my Q-tips in that I also use for nail polish swatches. Felt very silly walking into my local supermarket in this outfit and buying exactly one pumpkin. Let's see if we can make some cosmetic improvements to my little kitty here, to Garfield. Maybe I can fill this jack-o'-lantern with lasagna. Oh, that works like a dream. That's awesome. That did exactly what I wanted it to. I'm the smartest Halloween lady in the world. It's a little messy looking, but you know, sometimes cats have irregular coat patterns. Do you guys have a favorite cat? I do. I love a seal point ragdoll. I love any black cat. I love a Bombay cat. I love a black British short hair. I love a black American short hair. That's the kind of cat that my dearly departed Shadow was. She was my little lady. I had Shadow from when I was in 5th grade all the way up until like last summer. She had a long, wonderful life, and she was a silly little girl the whole time. Again, that's why I'm so down with ghosts. I loved her so much, and she's gone. And it's really nice to think that perhaps there's a little cat ghost following me around, and it's my little Shadow. Final step is I'm going to do another round of scraping on the inside of the cat. It's like I'm a really bad veterinarian, just to get out any lasting bits of guts that came about while we were carving. And then I think we're done. Come on. Cool. I did not do a good job the first time. I've made such a mess of myself. Oh my gosh, look at her. She's done. I have to lift her really slowly. I put a whole ass votive candle in there to give the full jack-o'-lantern effect. Definitely not the kind of candle you're supposed to put inside a pumpkin. I'll take it out right after. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this little Halloween craft extravaganza. You know what? That's actually smoking because it's hitting the pumpkin gut strings. We're just, okay. I'm truly very pleased with how my cat turned out. When I was doing my final round of scraping just now, I kind of thought about maybe giving the cat ears. I saw someone on TikTok do a jack-o'-lantern where they had extra pieces of pumpkin that they fashioned pointy cat ears out of and then stuck into the big pumpkin with toothpicks. I didn't do that because I don't have any excess pumpkin, but then I thought having the cat not have any ears kind of changes the whole impact of the jack-o'-lantern. Instead of being a house cat, perhaps it's a stray cat who lost its ears, street fighting other strays. And what's scarier than neglected animals? I'm gonna put it outside my apartment building and hope it doesn't get stolen. Because this is more valuable than any package. I would steal this were I walking by someone's apartment and I saw this adorable little pumpkin kitty. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? Say that you would. It'll hurt her feelings if you don't. I don't know what I'm covering here. She doesn't have any goddamn ears. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Happy October. Bye.